seems that today we have only this right side filled up, so left side is still vacant. We hope that people would be joining. Please come to the inner circle. Please come to the inner circle all, so that we can have this one. And Madhu, you be also in this inner circle, so that we can have a better participation. We have this happy occasion again. Today we are going to have this seminar from our summer interns, and you know that since a long time, it's more than a decade now, around 1.5 decade, that we have started this summer internship program on a regular basis from different prestigious universities in India and abroad. Students come, mostly these graduate students, they come for the summer internship. They take here, and we have this opportunity for the village immersion, as well as to have this opportunity to have this ICRISAT environment to learn, to interact with the scientists, to have this exposure to this real life research, and they have been able to deal with those issues which are of critical importance to the nation as well as to the global community, particularly for this agricultural development in the drylands in sub-Saharan Africa as well as in Asia. And we have been able to host also through this process a large number of students, and this year it has also another special characteristics. All the participant learners, 7 of them are female, and it's having that it's probably preparing for this 2014 is this year of this women, so preparing for that one on the eve of this 2013. Today we will be listening to the presentation from 2 of our these esteemed students who have been able to work during this last 3 months for these activities and work. One is Komal Shah and another is Namrata Pradhan. Both of them are from this Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, which has a long history in terms of social science research, and we have also long collaboration this institute for a longer period of time. It's coming in. And these 2 students, both Namrata as well as Pradhan and this Komal Shah, has this special achievements in their life, which is having that. We all know that they have been studying in their masters for this MA in Agribusiness Economics. In addition to that, I would like to highlight some of the special skills which has Komal has. Komal is also teaching this French language. She is a versatile genius in terms of this language. She knows the major languages in Indian, Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi. She also knows English, which we all know. But specialty, she knows also Spanish and French. And she has been also working for the Ministry of Finance as this for translation and other purpose, and she is also teaching French. So you know that communication and having knowledge of this and skill in this language is very important for an economist to have that one. While we mention that one, we think of only one language which we are able to communicate. She would be able to communicate with her studies and other things throughout the globe, because these are the major language of this even United Nations. So that is her another special skill. When it comes to this adoption of this short duration chickpea in particularly Andhra Pradesh, you will be able to listen how she has done that research. She and her speech itself will be speaking on her behalf. So when we see that Namrata, she has also other special skills. In addition to the studies, she has been able to organize those economics quizzes, which we see this, for example, Christian Zimmerman, who is one of the now global economics teacher and leader, not only contributing in the economic science, but also promoting this economic science to the global community through making those other events. So she is following that path. So following the great people in the globe who are having in our economic science. So with this short introduction, I would like to invite them, both Komal Shah and Namrata Pradhan, to speak on the short duration chickpea cultivars adoption and diffusion pattern in Andhra Pradesh. First, Komal will be presenting, then it will be Namrata. How many minutes it will be for? Okay, you have it within yourself, because this is a KSIConnect facility. So people from here, which you can see in front of your eyes, and people whom you cannot see, but virtually they are connected to you. So we will have this opportunity for them to ask questions, and for them to have this clarification and other things, so that you can also elaborate their learning fast. With this one, I invite Komal to start the presentation.
Thank you, sir. A very good morning to one and all present here. I am Komal Shah, and along with my fellow intern Namrata Pradhan, we will be presenting our topic for our summer internship over here, the short duration chickpea cultivars adoption and diffusion patterns in Andhra Pradesh. Chickpea is the third largest food legume crop and is grown in around 52 countries of the world, and it constitutes for 15% of the total pulse area. South and Southeast Asia alone contribute to about 86% of the global production, wherein India's share is 80%. According to FAO stat, India accounts for 33% of the world area and 22% of the world production of pulses. Among the major pulses grown in India, chickpea, pigeon pea, and lentils are important. About 65% of the global chickpea cultivation falls in India, and nearly 70% of the world production is consumed in India. Some of the characteristics of chickpea crop are: it is a rain-fed, post-rainy winter crop predominantly grown in residual soil moisture and rarely requires irrigation or fertilization. It is a sensitive crop and can be grown in temperatures as high as greater than 35 degrees Celsius or even lower than 15 degrees Celsius. With varied environments and this crop fits very well amongst different farming systems and has a maturity period of 90 to 120 days, and that minimizes the risk. Chickpea is one of the major sources of dietary protein in India. And thus, among the pulses, chickpea is the most important crop with high acceptability and wider use. As we can see from this graph, in India, chickpea occupies 35% of the area and 45% of the total pulse production. This graph, between the two orange lines, as you can see, there is actually a slight drop in the area production and yield of the chickpea performance. But that is due to, that is between the period of 1960 to 1990, when the Green Revolution had been pioneered, and thus the focus shifted from pulses to cereals. But post 1990, there has been a positive trend that is being exhibited in productivity area as well as in yield, and thus it is reaching its peak and is continuing to grow so. Studies have shown that chickpea has experienced an increase in growth in terms of production of area and yield in the state of Andhra Pradesh. As of today, Andhra Pradesh contributes to 7.2% of the area and 10.64% of the production share, which is not very great when you compare it with pioneering states such as Madhya Pradesh or Rajasthan. But what is important to note here is that the productivity is the highest in Andhra Pradesh, which is not the case in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, which contribute more area and production share in chickpea cultivation. Thus, with this, I will introduce a little bit of our project. Our study is a small component of the recent data collected for the chickpea technology adoption and impact study in Andhra Pradesh under the RP-MIP. However, this data was collected with many different objectives, but for the duration of our internship, we have worked only on certain modules of this study, which we will be presenting over the duration of this seminar. This is the sum of the districts that contribute towards to the maximum production of chickpea in Andhra Pradesh, and the highest is that of Kurnool, followed by Prakasam and then Anantapur. All these 7 districts put together give almost 85% plus of the total chickpea production in Andhra Pradesh. Our study objectives for this research topic were to understand the pattern of first adoption of chickpea improved cultivars in the sample districts. What we intended to understand in this under this objective is when each farmer started adopting the improved cultivars, and these farmers who were initially cultivating local varieties of chickpea but today have moved towards the improved cultivars of JG11, Kaktu and Bihar. Thus, we want to see if there is a pattern of change in the first adoption of each improved cultivar from this sample, as well as understanding if there is any difference in the pattern in taking series of cultivars in the different areas, that is the different districts, and to understand if there is what is the time lag or the time difference in replacing each new variety in different areas. We have 2 sources of information, the area as well as the number of farmers. However, in this study we have focused only on the number of farmers. The second objective is to understand tracking the diffusion of improved technology in the study districts of Andhra Pradesh. What is interesting to understand after the adoption process is the manner in which it has diffused along the districts. So we will be understanding the current scenario as well as the area allocation and the differences in different districts under this objective. The third objective is to understand the dynamics of varietal replacement. Under this, we want to understand the farmers, how they are changing their varieties, and we will be grouping them as most studies have shown between adopters and non-adopters. The fourth objective is to understand whether it has been observed in this study that more land is being allocated towards the cultivation of chickpea. So farmers' behavior towards the input use has been changing. So we were interested in knowing what their what their contribution was before and their practices today. And so a short summary and a very preliminary analysis has been presented over here. In the socio-economic factors, as is the case, we were also curious to understand what are the factors apart from the most usual factors that have affected the adoption of a particular cultivar. So in this map, we can see the seven districts plus Nellore and Guntur, which are contributing to the maximum area and production of chickpea in Andhra Pradesh. In our sampling framework, we have taken only 7 districts, of which we have taken, each district is divided into mandals. Only those mandals which have greater than 3,000 hectares, only those mandals have been considered for our study. And then based on a random sampling, there have been villages selected, and this is the composition of our study area. There are a total of 1,080 farmers. However, only 810 farmers contribute to the chickpea farmers, and the other 2,270 households are those that are non-chickpea farmers. There are various reasons that a person would give to grow chickpea, and some of them, these are the top rated reasons that have been given by all the farmers in the 7 districts. Chickpea cultivation is less labor intensive as it has been as we have viewed. It has assured yields, a very good market and excellent remunerative prices. It is extremely suitable for mechanical operations and can be easily cultivated in a large scale. These are the seeds that are prominent in the in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and these are the seeds that have been considered as the improved cultivars, that is Jaki and JG11, Kaktu, Vihar and NBEG3. Anegri has been considered as the benchmark cultivar in our study. I will now be discussing the results from Kurnool, Anantapur and Mehboob These districts have been clubbed together because they fall under a similar rainfall zone, that is between 500 to 600 mm, and they are also considered as drought prone areas. So, what I've tried to understand within these districts are the socio-economic characteristics of the sample of farmers, the pattern of first adoption, the diffusion process, as well as the behavioral changes in relation to technology. The determinants to chickpea adoption will be discussed by my friend Namrata, as it is a combined for all the 7 districts. So these are the socio-economic characteristics of the sample farmers. The average years of chickpea farming is 11, family size is 5, the average education is around 6 years. But what is interesting to note over here is that in Kurnool, even though it is showing 5, almost 32% of the farmers are uneducated, and they contribute to nearly 25% of the land under chickpea cultivation. And the average land holding is around 20 acres. And Kurnool and Anantapur, since they solely cultivate the since they majorly cultivate the improved cultivars, the proportion under chickpea cultivation is higher in both these districts. Starting with this slide, we will see the first adoption of the chickpea improved cultivars. Anegiri was launched in 1978 in Karnataka, but it came towards Andhra Pradesh only in 1988, and hence, as you can see, it is there only in 1988 and has been growing ever since and reached its peak in around 2000. And then after that, there has been no substantial farmer that has, the number of farmers adopting it has gone down. Whereas in JG11, it started in it was launched in 1999 and has reached its peak immediately in 2006 in a span of in a short span of 7 years. And thus it is interesting to note that between these two cultivars, the difference between the adoption rate. This is the cumulative number of farmers cultivating Anegri, JG11, Kaktu and Vihar. Kurnool district is characterized by the cultivation of the Desi variety of Anegri or JG11. Both Kaktu and Vihar, being Kabuli varieties, are not so very prominently grown in the district. Similarly is the case in Anantapur, where JG11 and Anegri continue to be very important and have the time lag of adoption between Anegri and JG11 is almost similar, when an Anegri has taken almost 15 years and JG11 has reached its peak adoption within 4 years to 5 years of introduction. Similarly in Mehboob Anegri and JG11 continue to be the ruling cultivars over here, and Bihar of a very small percentage. What is important to understand after that is, as we've noticed from our study, that the farmers are allocating more land under chickpea. Within the past 3 years, what is the changes that have been observed? So almost 73% of the farmers in the 3 districts have said that they have had a constant allocation towards land, while 18% have been increasing their land by replacing other crops such as sunflower and groundnut, and those that are decreasing have replaced chickpea with cash crops such as tobacco or cotton. So obviously JG11, the Desi variety, is extremely preferred over the other cultivars in these 3 districts. And today in these 3 districts, in Mehboob, all the sample farmers cultivate only JG11, and in Kurnool and Anantapur, there is only a scattered inclusion of the Kabuli varieties of Kaktu and Bihar, whereas JG11 continues to be the ruling variety. These graphs show the composition of cultivars in each individual district, where JG11 obviously is the dominant variety in Kurnool as well as in Anantapur, and in Mehboob it is 100%. So what we wanted to understand after that is, in what fashion have these farmers who initially adopted Anegri switched to the improved cultivars of Anegri or of JG11, of Kaktu or of Vihar. So amongst these districts, almost 77% switched directly from Anegri to JG11 and till date continue to cultivate JG11, 0.85 to Kaktu and 13.15 to Vihar. Whatever differences are there in the total, that is because there are those farmers who are cultivating either a combination of JG11 and Kaktu or JG11 and Vihar, and those have not been added over here. Similarly is the case in Anantapur and Mehbubnagar, with almost 75% switching directly from Anegiri to JG11. So after that, as I said initially, that farmers are classified, as literature also has it, into adopters and non-adopters to understand a particular trend. Similarly is the case over here. We have classified the farmers into adopters and non-adopters, and in what fashion these farmers have been allocating their land holding towards the cultivation of chickpea has been broadly classified into 4 more categories, wherein A1 are those farmers who cultivate chickpea on a part of their land and do not have leased in land. A2 are those farmers whose total owned land is allocated for chickpea cultivation only. It could also be maybe because they don't have much black soil, or they have fully saturated their farmlands and they again do not have any leased in land. A3 farmers are those who grow chickpea on their own land but also have leased in land for chickpea cultivation. It is possible that these farmers too have saturated the use of the major part of their land and thus are leasing in more land for chickpea cultivation. The A3 adopters today who cultivate chickpea, like the A2, have saturated their farm holding and thus are leasing in more land to contribute more to productivity and area expansion. And finally, the switchers, these are the farmers who have blended into the adoption trend and have switched from other post-rainy crops into the cultivation of chickpea. These farmers and the number of A3 farmers indicate that since they have contributed overall to the expansion of area by blending into the adoption trend and switching into the cultivation of chickpea crops, these farmers, the switchers on the contrary are those who have entered directly and have started cultivating only chickpea. Thus, there has been a rapid increase in area due to the addition of the A3 and switcher farmers. And non-adopters are those who do not cultivate who do not cultivate improved cultivars of chickpea, wherein Anegiri is considered as the local variety and JG11, Kaktu and Vihar are considered as the improved cultivars. So the composition of these farmers has been classified into our districts as well. In what form are these farmers a part of the R districts? So as is the case in the A1 farmers in all the 3 districts, they are pretty high, and so is the case in A2 farmers, which means that these farmers have not really added more land, but these are the majority of the farmers that contribute to the overall production area of the chickpea. Whereas A3 and switchers, who ideally would have been those farmers adding to the area expansion, are not very vast in these 3 districts. After that, it is interesting to see in what fashion the chickpea seed has diffused, especially JG11 in the district of Kurnool. So it started in 1999 in the district of Gudur, moving gradually to Kurnool and then down to, and this is the excuse me, I can't pronounce the names of the districts, so I'm going to skip that. But this is the fashion in which the diffusion has taken place. We try to understand if there is any particular pattern in which the diffusion is taking place, but there wasn't really any pattern in which the diffusion has taken place. And now moving to one of the most important parts of our study, to understand the behavioral changes that have been perceived by the farmers and us from their responses. With the Green Revolution, it was interesting to see how farmers started intensifying their practices, and even the government gave subsidies in the form of either seeds or fertilizers, and so the intensification was generally in the process of crops, by repeating the crops, whereas in the case of Andhra Pradesh, it is curious but it is interesting that here it is in the form of land allocation and mechanization. So what we want to understand is whether the improved introduction of improved cultivars has led to agricultural intensification. And to understand this, some of the parameters that we have taken into consideration are cropping intensity, land use intensity, input use behavior, extent of mechanization, soil and water conservation practices. Of these variables, land allocation is specific since land is being allocated especially for the cultivation of chickpea, may it be owned or leased in. In the case of mechanization, earlier there was the use of manual on-farm labor as bullocks, but today they have moved towards mechanical implements, and almost it is an interest we shall see in the further slides. In the case of fertilizer and pesticide as well, there has been a lot of growth in resource allocation. Most of the farmers initially were allocating only 20 to 25 kgs of seed in the seed red, but today have started allocating almost 40 to 45 kg in the case of the desi cultivars, and almost 70 kgs in the case of the Kabuli cultivars. So here is a small overview of the older allocation almost a decade before and the current revised allocation as of today. So as it can be seen on an average, the farmers who used to initially put in rupees 1400 per acre in mechanization have doubled their input in mechanization, and same is the case for fertilizer and pesticide. What is also interesting to note is that all these three components have 100% change. All the farmers have adopted these change, and from the ranges we can understand what the minimum used to be in the first 10 years, before 10 years, and the maximum and today. So there has been a doubling in the input allocation in the case of all the three districts. This is the case of Anantapur. In Anantapur, there are 135 farmers, but the sample here is only 134. That is because one farmer has yet not shifted to start making these changes and will be changing in the years to come, as has been noted. Similarly is the case in Karnool and Mehboob. Those farmers that are not in the sample are those who will be allocating in future. So here is an overview of their behavioral changes. With about 0.5% of the farmers who decided to intensify gradually over the years to come, the rest of the 99% of the sample households have already intensified their farms, and there has thus been a marginal increase in land allocation, be it owned or leased in. There have been very, very remarkable changes in the use of fertilizer and pesticide and mechanization as well. As of today, mechanization in all of Andhra Pradesh is at 90% or above, and most of the farmers are willing to allocate double the resources from before, since they are benefiting significantly from it. Whereas in the case of pesticide, only the kernel sample farmers have shown a much higher inclination to put in more money, whereas the rest of the farms, rest of the districts, so is not the case. With this, I hand over the dais to Namrata, who will continue the analysis of the rest of the districts. Thank you.
Good morning. Hello. Good morning, everybody. In this part, I will be discussing about the results from Prakasam, Kadapa, Medak, and Nizamabad. These districts have been clubbed together because of the similar rainfall characteristics. As mentioned by my colleague, this part will also follow the same course of pattern. First, I'll discuss the socio-economic characteristics of sample farmers, then the pattern of first adoption of improved cultivars, what is the current adoption of the improved cultivars, the diffusion process, behavioral changes in relation to technology adoption, and the overall determinants to chickpea adoption for all the 810 farmers. The socio-economic characteristics of the sample farmers. It is interesting to know that the average years of chickpea farmers in Prakasam, Kadapa and Nizamabad was from 7 to 8 years, but in Medak it was 16 years. Average family size was 4 years and the average family member working in farm is 3. Average landholding size is much more in Kadapa compared to other 3 districts, so is the proportion of total area under chickpea cultivation. This is the first adoption of chickpea improved cultivars in Prakasam. Anegri was first introduced in 1988, but it started picking up in 1991 and the adoption of Anegri reached maximum in 2004. JG11 was introduced in 1999, so was Kaktu introduced. JG11 started taking the adoption of JG11 reached its maximum in 2004 and the adoption of Kaktu reached its maximum in 2008. It is interesting to note that adoption of Kaktu, it is interesting to note that Anegri took almost 15 years to reach its maximum point, whereas JG11 and Kaktu took almost 7 to 8 years for reaching the maximum. Similar is the case in Medak. In Medak, the first adoption of Anegri took place in 1990. Though there has been a fluctuating trend in the number of farmers adopting Anegri in Medak, the number of adopters stabilized after 2002. There are few farmers cultivating who are still cultivating Anegri in Medak. JG11 started in 2007 and has not been much adopted in Medak due to the presence of Anegri. In Nizamabad also Anegri is still cultivated. It started in 2001 and reached its maximum in 2006. JG11 was started in 2005 and has reached its maximum in 2008. A similar trend can be observed that Anegri took larger number of years for reaching its maximum, whereas the improved cultivars JG11 in Nizamabad or Kaktu in Prakasam took shorter duration to reach the maximum level. In Kadapa, Anegri, the first adoption started in 1997, reached its maximum in 2008, again a gap of 10 to 12 years. JG11 was started in 2004, reached its maximum in 2008, almost 4 years. It just took 4 years to reach its maximum. Kaktu and Vihar are not much significant in Kadapa. This is the first adoption of chickpea improved cultivars in overall study sample. This is the cumulative of the cumulative area. This is the area allocation under chickpea. As we all know, the area under chickpea has been growing over the last 2 decades, but considering the data for last 3 years, 73%, nearly 74% farmers have kept their area constant under chickpea. 21% farmers have increased their area by replacing crops like cotton, tobacco, groundnut or sorghum to chickpea. Only negligible part of farmers, that is just 4.4%, have decreased their land sharing. Kaktu is the most dominant cultivar in Prakasam, which is the Kabuli variety. Medak, Kadapa and Nizamabad are still dominated by the Desi variety. It is interesting to note that even though Kabuli variety gives less yield and fetches more market price, Desi variety is preferred more by the farmers because of its low risk and high consumption demand. Relatively, Prakasam district farmers are having high innovative attitude as well as risk-loving behavior, hence the adoption of Kabuli is more in Prakasam. This graph shows the percentage of farmers adopting the different cultivars. As we can see, Prakasam is dominated by Kaktu. By 55% of farmers still cultivate Kaktu in Prakasam, followed by GG11. This shows that Kaktu is the dominant variety in Prakasam. In Nizamabad, 32% people cultivate Anegri, that is, they have not adopted any other improved cultivars, they still continue to cultivate Anegri. 68% have shifted from Anegri to JG11. In Medak, the picture is equal. 50% farmers cultivate JG11, 50% farmers cultivate Anegri. In Kadapa, significantly JG11 is the dominant variety by 85% farmers cultivating JG11, and we can see the presence of Vihar in Kadapa. 16% farmers cultivate Vihar in Kadapa. Along with the classification of farmers and major varieties in different districts, it is also interesting to understand the pattern of varietal replacement. In Prakasam, out of 108 farmers, 26 farmers shifted from Anegri to JG11, and they are cultivating JG11 currently, solely JG11. 41 farmers shifted from Anegri to Kaktu. 38% of the total chickpea area is under Kaktu, and only 2 farmers shifted from Anegri to Vihar. In Kadapa also, 83 farmers shifted from Anegri to JG11. Similar is the case in Medak and Nizamabad. It is interesting to note that only in Prakasam, there is large number of farmers currently cultivating Kaktu only. In rest of 3 districts, as we can see, 24%, 61% in Kadapa, 48% in Medak, and 62% in Nizamabad still lies under JG11, proving that the current dominant cultivar in all these 3 districts is JG11. As said by Komal, we have classified the farmers as adopters and non-adopters. Adopters are further classified as A1 farmers who cultivate chickpea on part of the own land only. A2 farmers whose total own land is allocated for chickpea cultivation only. They do not have any leased in land. A3 farmers who are those who grow chickpea on their own land and also have leased in land for chickpea cultivation. And switchers are the farmers who have blended into the adoption trend and have switched from other post-rainy crops. And adopters are the farmers who are still cultivating Anegri and have not adopted any other improved cultivars. This is the type of chickpea farmers in Prakasam, Kadapa, Medak and Nizamabad. It is interesting to note that the number of switchers are more in Prakasam followed by Kadapa. We have very negligible amount of switchers in Medak and Nizamabad. There are few non-adopters in Medak and Nizamabad who are still cultivating Anegri. The proportion of A1 farmers is more in Kadapa, and the proportion of A3 farmers is more in Prakasam. This is the diffusion pattern of Kaktu in Prakasam district. In Prakasam, we had concentrated only on 4 mandals. The first adoption took place in 2002. The second was in 2003, and in other 2 districts, it was in the same year, 2004. We tried to analyze some pattern of diffusion, but we couldn't analyze a specific pattern of diffusion of Kaktu in Prakasam district. As mentioned earlier, some of the broad parameters considered for measuring intensification are cropping intensity, land use intensity, use of extent of mechanization, soil and water conservation practices, etc. So we have summarized the perceived behavioral changes in all the 4 districts. In Prakasam, it is interesting to note that almost 100% farmers double their allocation in mechanization, fertilizer application cost and pesticide application cost. Few farmers also revised their allocation with respect to own land allocation and leased in land allocation. But the major changes were in mechanization, fertilizer and pesticide. We can see that earlier the farmers who were willing to pay 2,400 rupees for mechanization are now willing to pay 3,800. Similarly, farmers willing to pay 2,000 for fertilizer application cost, who were paying 2,000 for fertilizer, are now willing to pay 3,600. So, in a way, they have doubled the allocation. Similar is the case in Kadapa. Mechanization, fertilizer and pesticide have been significantly being doubled. But in case of Medak, much change have not been made in own land allocation or leased in land allocation. The rest factors are all common for Medak as well as Nizamabad. Here also mechanization, fertilizers have been doubled. Land in changes with respect to own land allocation and leased in land allocation have not been much significant. To summarize the behavioral changes, we can say that among the 4 districts, changes were more evident in case of Prakasam, followed by Kadapa. Medak and Nizamabad showed relatively less changes in terms of land allocation. However, variables like extent of mechanization, fertilizer and pesticide application were significantly reported across 4 districts. They just doubled it. Further deeper, this is just the preliminary analysis. We'll be needing deeper analysis to understand the perceptions across districts. Um, Understanding the adoption pattern and understanding how the varieties have been adopted and the pattern of intensification, it is also necessary to understand what factors have led to the adoption. To understand this, we have used the logistic regression function to understand the determinants of chickpea adoption. The dependent variable here is the adopters and non-adopters. Explanatory variables are years of farming experience, proportion of leased in land in total holding, total assets of household, share of black soils in total land holding, proportion of owned farm labor in the family, type of credit requirements by the household, share of rabi cropped in the total land holding, area under commercial crops and area under non-commercial crops. This table shows the factors which are significant. Out of 14 factors, we have selected 9 factors. The rest factors were not included because of the problems faced in multicollinearity. The highlighted factors, that is proportion of leased in land, share of black soils in total holdings, type of credit requirements by household, share of rabi cropped in area in the total land holding, area under commercial crops and area under non-commercial crops have found to be very significant in the process of adoption. Considering the odds ratio, we can say that the probability of farmers adopting chickpea in black soil is higher. Similar is the case of farmers adopting chickpea. The probability of farmers adopting chickpea is more when black soil is concerned. The probability of adopting chickpea is more under area under non-commercial crops. The goodness of it, Hosmer-Lemshaw table shows that the data has been adequately fitted. Hence, we can say that to generalize, the factors affecting adoption are proportion of leased in land, total share of black soil in total holdings, share type of credit requirements, share of rabi crop, area under non-commercial crops, area under commercial crops. To conclude, overall, Anegri, which is an old cultivar, took nearly 12 to 16 years to reach the peak level of adoption, whereas JG11 reached in 8 to 10 years. Similar is the case with Kaktu in Prakasam, it just took 7 to 8 years to reach the peak level of adoption. We have tried to track the improved cultivars adoption, and which proved that nearly 98% area is under the improved cultivars. The single dominant variety ruling in the state is JG11 with nearly 85% share of cropped area. It was followed by Vihar, which is mostly in Kurnool, and Kaktu, which is highly adopted in Prakasam. There are, as we have mentioned earlier, there are few non-adopters in Medak and Nizamabad. That's why we find presence of Anegri in these districts. We have also tried to understand the time lag, that is when the improved cultivar was introduced and how much time did it take to adopt or reach its peak. The initial adoption lags were different across study districts. Districts like Prakasam and Kurnool exhibited 6 to 8 years, while Nizamabad and Medak took nearly 10 years. Most of the sample have shifted from Anegri to JG11, that is 66% farmers have shifted from Anegri to JG11, and another 15% farmers have shifted from Anegri to Kabuli, either Kaktu or Bihar. Further, according to the classification of farmers, nearly 35% sample farmers fell under A1 category and another 20% sample farmer under A2. The remaining 45% represented the A3 and switchers. The A3 farmers and the switchers have kind of a double effect on the production, on the adoption process. A3 and switchers, the type A3 and switchers are not only adding to the production but are also increasing the area under chickpea, whereas A1 and A1 and A2 farmers are only increasing the production of chickpea. The initial results on behavioral changes provided evidence towards intensification process. Allocation of more area, mechanization, and applying more inputs were some of the significant variables to be analyzed further. Um, some of the determinants for adoption, as I have mentioned earlier, are availability of leased-in land, availability of suitable black soils, credit availability, share of Rabi crops, and allocation of area under non-commercial crops. This is just the primarily analysis of the data. Much more deeper perception is needed to understand the adoption process in detail. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Komal and Namrata. I would like to put forward another information in this study. Namrata, you have listened to her this study of this Chickpea adoption. Her last study was containerization of this Indian this export assets and its impact on this India landscape. Can you imagine that last one which one did, which was beans to production in India. So you could see that how you can switch from one field to another field very quickly and can add or excel in that particular one. You have listened also how Komal has done this one. Before I would like to open the floor, I would like to congratulate the supervisors, both Dr. Kumar Charindo and Moses Shah for excellently supervising those and showing that how they can nurture the talents here. So with this one, I would like to open the floor for questions, comments, and suggestions. Yeah, Dr. Rao.
Excellent presentation, both of you. Namrata, I have a couple of questions, given also that your background has also been on a different line. Did you get any sense of the gender part of it in this?
No, sir, we haven't included the gender part in this. We haven't considered.
Informally, did you get a sense? It may not be part of the study, but did you
Yes,
get a
there
sense?
the gender participation is not much as like if we want to consider adoption and the gender and its impact on adoption, it's not much significant in the given data.
Second question was in terms of output. Now you mentioned credit and fertilizer, all inputs which are coming in. Did you perceive any marketing challenges, or was it being sold? There's no challenge there.
The given data we was constrained only to this. The marketing data was not included. GG11 is a short duration cultivar. Like Anegri used to take 4 months, that is 120 days, but GG11 just takes 3 months. Moreover, it is wilt resistant, drought resistant. As we've seen, Karnool, Anantapur, and Mehboob are drought prone areas. Farmers have preferred JG11 over Anegri because of its drought resistant. And moreover, there is more consumption demand for JG11. People, compared to Kabuli, people in Andhra Pradesh prefer more, like consume more of Desi variety, that is JG11. Kaktu is more for uh, export purposes. So we can say that.
grain size is much better than Anagiri, because Anagiri has a smaller grain size and Behavioural has a bigger grain size and uniform size across all the grades. So which, when you take the two products into the market, obviously Behavioural will get fetch more price than Anagiri. So these three, four factors mainly determines the farmers choosing Behavioural. But why they are not all moving very forward or towards is because of wherever they feel more very good soil, they allocate those soils for cropping pattern. Wherever they feel it, since it is a post rain crop, they will choose where they have very good land holding, water holding soils are there. They will go for those soils for cropping, and other land they will allocate for these. And regarding for your question, the marketability, so far till last 7 years there is no problem at all. But currently from the last 6 months the prices have gone very drastically. Earlier it was around 30, 35 rupees per kg. Now it's down to 29 rupees. So it is because of the imports India is importing from Australia. From the last 6 months it is happening. Now the farmers currently in the market, if you go and talk to them, they are facing that is a problem. They are resisting and putting a lot of notes to the CM and even to the ministry. They are going to taking appointments with the PM to stop the imports, but that is not happening. A lot of all the production in Andhra Pradesh especially held up in cold storage.
Related question to this is there any MSP on this product?
Yes, the MSP it is there.
How much is that?
It is 3,700.
Okay, so 3,700.
So the current prices in the market really gone to 29 rupees.
So the government is not picking it up at the, is not the government picking it up at the
No, no,
price?
no, no. That's the problem actually. Even when I interacted with the farmers who are currently having this crop, till last 6 years they enjoyed the fruits. Now it is started with chickpea for especially in the last 6 months.
One question, you or the so they mentioned about the earlier period means how many years back change when your fertilizer pesticides change was there like 1500 to 3000. So earlier period is five years ago.
About a decade ago.
A decade ago.
Yes.
So then you may have to adjust like 1500 10 years ago maybe now.
Yes.
So that real price.
Yeah, we need to take those parameters into account. But it is, that's why we just put that one. It's a preliminary perception.
Yes.
We cannot ask the farmer. Some are adopted in 2005, some are adopted in 2000. There is a variation. So you just take it simple to understand whether there is any change in the input use behavior or not.
And the number of farmers by variety how you picked up is available statistically the number of farmers in district by particular variety by survey or it's available.
It is by survey.
Because survey are only few, but the number of farmers going to the whole district mentioned here the sample survey only, not the whole district.
No, that's why
So that's the
actually
key issues.
she did not explain a little bit more on the sampling. It is a state level representative survey taken from 7 districts, covering around 30 mandals and covering about 90 villages. So we have gone down to the mandal level data and collected from around 238 mandals. Then from that we made a sample. This one. So it is a more representative sample. Based on that we are telling that is a 95, 98% and then 2%. It is more of representative and we interacted with many Department of Agriculture people and we are confident about it.
So that means that if the family is one, two, three, four, seven, eight, four families.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, actually, it is based on the proportion land concentration to area. The sample is proportional to the chickpea area in that district. Wherever, obviously, where we have taken 27 sample interviews, say Medak, Nizamabad and Nagar, we have only the chickpea cultivation is just started in these places. Only the Medak district was growing from last 15, 20 years. The Nagar and Nizamabad just started from last 3, 4 years. So the crop is concentrated particularly in 2, 3 months, not in everywhere, not in the whole district. So even though we are talking about Prakasam, the crop is dominant in only 4 mandals, not in everywhere. So based on
round of applause for this supervision which they have done, the nurturing which they have done. And before I complete, I need to invite you also in the afternoon. We have this program level seminars in our seminar room. There will be 3 more presentations by the students. It will start at 1:30 immediately after lunch. And we have also arranged tea in between there. So we will have that. Because tea is also yeah. So we invite you to the tea, and we congratulate you for this one second.
Any from outside?
No, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.